Hi everyone, good morning. So we're a little late, but that'll be okay. So welcome. My name is Yuval, Livnat. I teach here in the Refugee Rights Clinic, and I'm a member of TrafLab ERC project. And I'll introduce our speakers in a minute. Yeah, I have it here. That's okay. I'm good. Chat time. Okay. Yes. Okay, so this first panel is part of TrafLab ERC project and talks about trafficking. And it might seem weird that we are in a conference about intimacies, and the first thing we're doing is talking about trafficking and enslavement. Nevertheless, I think it is important, and I'll take a few minutes to explain why I think it is important. I think one of the things we try to do in TrafLab, and Hilai is our main investigator, is to explain that there's kind of a continuum between everyday capitalism and disparity in bargaining powers and economic dependency, that at some point might become exploitation, and at some point might become trafficking and enslavement. So it's not really a dichotomy, but there's kind of a continuum, and we as legal academics, for example, have to understand where and when this line is being crossed. And it's tough to understand under capitalism, because capitalism is built on disparity in power, in economic power. And I think very much so the same can be said about intimacy and partnerships and spouses at times. So we'd like to think that everything is about romantic love, but we know in real world that sometimes there is emotional dependency and psychological dependency and economic dependency. So just as we try to understand in our TrafLab project, how can you say, no, I don't want this job, or don't treat me this way, under capitalism, when you live in poverty or extreme poverty, you might ask the same question, how can I say no, me, usually a woman, but sometimes maybe also a man, under patriarchy, and under extreme emotional dependency, etc. So, for example, in our refugee rights clinic, we have a case of an Eritrean woman who came by herself as a minor from Eritrea through Egypt, Sinai, underwent horrible things there. She came by herself and started looking for someone to meet, and she went online on Facebook. And she met this Eritrean man who's older than her, and she started living with him. Shortly thereafter, became pregnant. And when I met with her, she told me this story of horrible envy or jealousy on the part of her partner. So she says that he wouldn't allow her to use the phone. He wouldn't allow her to get out of the house. At some point, her sister came to Israel. She could meet with her only when he's there. When she was taking a shower, he was outside waiting for her. So there was extreme sick jealousy, which we know happens. We know about marital envy. And the question is, if at some point this can become enslavement. So I'm trying to claim that she should be entitled to be in the shelter of victims of enslavement, because this romantic relationship, what started maybe as a romantic relationship, was actually at some point enslavement. He enslaved her. He had complete control over her. She couldn't decide what she wanted in her day to day. So again, there might be a continuum of love, dependency, and enslavement. And actually, so this is the one side where the trafficker on the enslavement, himself or herself, usually himself, is the object of affection, you might say. And the other one, much more optimistic, is where the object of affection is the savior. So when someone is saved by a friend, by a person who shows solidarity, etc., etc. And we actually see, and this will be my final words, but if we take Israel as a test case, so in 2006, we passed our general anti-trafficking law. And we have so far 3 convictions. I'm talking not about trafficking for sex purposes, so non-sexual trafficking. And we have 3 cases. 2 of them are indictments of cults. So basically, the Goel Ratzon case and the Ambush case. So basically, the person who was enslaving the women and children, the guru, was the father. In the Goel Ratzon, he had, I think, 17 wives, which some of them said they truly loved him, and some of them still say they truly love him. But the court found that he had complete control, emotional, psychological control. He would tell them when to have sex with whom, including children sometimes, to work and give him the money, to disown their families, etc., etc., etc. And they claim, at some point, some of them claimed and sometimes still claim that he's the love of their life. So how do we distinct here between romantic love and enslavement? And the third case, the Julani case, is a different one. So here we have a Filipina migrant worker coming to live in Israel. And she lives with this family, and it's blurred here also, because on the one hand, she had to sleep in the toilet. It was a big toilet, the court says, but still a toilet, a bathroom. And she would hardly get paid. And she could not, and she was threatened that if she leaves the house, the police would catch her, etc., etc., etc. All these indicators of trafficking. But on the other hand, she was treated nicely at times. She was giving presents. When it was her birthday, she was telling her, congratulations, let's go do something. So it's blurred, our intimacy. And many, when we see, especially with domestic workers, the family says, how can she say that we mistreated her? She was like family to us. So again, this line between intimacy and enslavement can be difficult to detect. And I think this is one reason why we have to talk about trafficking and enslavement, even though this conference is about intimacy. So understand where it's true good intimacy and the illegitimate one, or not intimacy at all. And the last point is really what I said, and I think most of the talks here revolve around this more optimistic notion, is when my savior, the person who indicates me as a victim of enslavement or trafficking, and who helps me flee, or helps me rehabilitate, is someone who created some kind of solidarity with me. So in the Julani case, it's the Filipina girlfriends who actually helped her flee, and who actually took her to Kavloved, the organization, to help her. So it was friendship here, the intimacy of friendship, who helped her get away from her enslavement. And in other cases, unions, solidarity between sex workers, etc., this network can either help to prevent the horrible circumstances of enslavement and trafficking to begin with, or help detect and rehabilitate and assist the victims of trafficking and enslavement. So I think in both perspectives, we can talk about the relationship between intimacy and trafficking or enslavement. So this was my 2 cents.